All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, I have an interview for you, and this is going to be interesting to kind of talk about the topic and so forth. Is our guest, Mr. Don Kotnik. Don, how are you?
Hi, Bill. Doing really well today. It's Friday, so looking forward to the weekend.
Absolutely. Don is an attorney. And what we are going to talk about today is something that, we always think that it's never going to happen. But we're talking about what to do immediately after a car accident of some kind. Now, I find this to be very intriguing. I find it to be interesting, but I want to stress that this is not personalized legal advice. What we're going to be talking about today is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for legal advice from an attorney that you have hired. If you or someone you know has been involved in a crash, you should seek the advice immediately of an experienced personal injury attorney. It's kind of like, oh, I got a pain in my side. And somebody online says, well, that's because you're, eating too much gluten.
Right.
And the next thing you know, the alien comes out of your chest and you wonder where that came from. That's why you should have went and seen the doctor.
Right. Immediately.
Yes. Okay, good. You're from this area. And as a matter of fact, I'm in northeastern Ohio. And I'm really happy that you're actually in the studio today because I have to connect with people with technology so much anymore. So it's so nice that you are here. Are you from this area originally?
Actually, no. For full disclosure, I'm originally from Northwest Ohio, a little town called Bascom, Ohio, about 900 people. So it was a rural area. There were 7 kids in my family, so I was looking to go elsewhere and to see what else was out in the world. And I made my way to, I went to law school in Cleveland, John Marshall Law School. And that was in 1990. I got a job interview in Canton, Ohio, and fell in love with the area and been here ever since. So
that's fantastic. Well, we're certainly glad you're here. I've met Don in one of the business marketing groups that are around in this area. I got to know him over the years. What made you decide to become an attorney?
Well, my dad always said that there's always room. Everybody says there's too many attorneys, but my dad always said there's always room for another good attorney. And he said it's an honorable profession. And I truly believe that and still do. And it's just something I always wanted to do since I think my first government argument, we had a mock trial in 6th grade, and I was one of the attorneys, and I just decided, that's what I want to do. And I set out to do that. And, here I am 34 years later doing it. So,
yes.
But I do attribute it to my dad.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's interesting that you mentioned that because being personal injury, I know that that conjures up the stereotype of an ambulance chaser. And a lot of that, quite frankly, is fed by a lot of attorneys who have the crazy ads on TV and these, all the other things. But quite frankly, I got to tell you, a good attorney, I've been lucky. I've known some really good ones. I work in the mental health industry and addiction recovery community. And there's a lot of attorneys that I've met that have dedicated themselves to helping people recover, get their lives back on track after maybe being arrested or something like that. After they've gone on that journey, they haven't hurt anybody but themselves, so on and so forth. And they just don't have the means to get some of that legal stuff squared away, and they help them, and they don't make a lot of money. And we don't hear enough about those kind of guys. And when you get involved in an accident, I mean, you really have to have somebody watching your back, somebody you trust, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's you have a relationship with that client that's very important. You have to have communication. I stress that. The glitzy ads and all that; those are out there. It's unfortunate. That's how they feel they need to get clients. At my firm, Slagle and Kotnik, we really rely mostly on word of mouth from other clients, that kind of thing. And that's where you get the best clients. And there's a lot of unsung heroes. The personal injury attorneys, do a lot of work to help people get what they deserve. It's not we're not looking for anything extra. It's what they deserve under the law. And there's a lot of unsung heroes out there as far as attorneys, battling in the trenches every day with, insurance companies and God knows who else to get, what the client deserves. And that takes a lot of work sometimes.
It does. It does. Yeah, I'm one of those people that I suppose it's a good thing. When I go out into traffic, I don't have an attitude that it's not going to happen to me. I always feel that a crash is impending.
Yes.
My time is up sooner or later. And it's one of my, I don't want to say one of my worst fears. Cancer is probably at the top of the list, but a car accident is something that is always,
Yes.
because it's how many people do you know that have been in an accident? I would have to say it would be impossible to know someone who has never known anyone that has been in an accident.
That's
I mean,
true.
we've all known somebody that's been in an accident.
That's very true. I myself am like you. I am a defensive driver, and it's sometimes I'm thinking it's not a question of if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. But so I'm looking 2-3 times each way, and I'm still shocked. And I've said this in some of our networking meetings that what I still see on the road, people looking at their phones and
Oh yeah.
actually watching a video while they're driving, not just texting, but I've seen people watching videos
Oh, yeah.
on their phone as they're driving. And that's the worst that you can do. It's just,
It's as bad as drunk driving, really.
yeah, if not worse in some cases, believe
Yeah.
it or not.
Yes.
It's just you're so distracted that it's just a matter of when you're going to get into a collision. So, so I'm like you. I'm always looking, and even then, sometimes you can't help it. It still helps to, happens to, you can be the best driver around and still get into a collision. So,
Okay.
but it does help if you're careful and
Sure.
more vigilant.
Yeah. I always kind of have an escape route to, especially when I'm on the expressway. When I see cars start to bunch up, I think,
Yeah.
where can I go off the road or what have
Yeah,
you? So
yeah.
okay. Well, let's say that the worst happens. We all hear that sound, that okay,
Mhm.
that happens. Okay. Let's be proactive. Let's go through the steps first, the things that you do want to do. All right. And I would presume the obvious one would be to call the police.
Yes, absolutely. You want to make sure the police are on the scene as soon as possible so they can talk to witnesses. If, depending on the severity of the collision, they want to make sure that where were the cars. Hopefully, they're going to take pictures of where the cars ended up, the damage to the cars, all those things. Even more importantly, getting the names of the other drivers. If it's a multi-collision, there could be 3, 4, 5 drivers involved. So you want all their information, especially their insurance information. That's obviously critical. If there's a witness that saw it, you want to make sure you have their information, their phone number. All of those things are so critical to a collision. And handling a collision after the fact that you want to make sure that you call the police immediately if you're able, or have someone else call the police so they get to the scene as soon as possible.
Sure. These days, just about everybody has a phone that has the ability to take pictures. And that's something. A friend of mine here not too long ago had an incident happen in a parking lot. And one of the things they forgot to do was take a picture of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so critical. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, photographs. It's the old cliche. It's the photograph's worth 1,000 words. To me, it's worth 10,000 words because I can describe, the collision to an insurance adjuster. When I'm saying this is how the collision happened, and I can talk about the damage to the car in a letter. But there's no substitute for that, picture of the car, especially if it's, crumpled and, a really damaged car. You want to, you want those pictures. You want the insurance adjuster to see those pictures.
Yeah.
And so I don't care how many pictures you take. The more the better, as far as I'm concerned. And I tell people if for some reason they didn't get pictures at the scene, because it's not a guarantee that the police are always going to have pictures of the cars. I've had many cases where it marks the little box that said pictures were taken, but then we find out they don't have them, or they got erased or whatever. So it's, if you can go to wherever the car is after the fact at the towing yard or the repair shop and get pictures, then that's just as good, or, at least the best alternative if you can't get them at the scene.
Yeah. The next thing you have listed is collecting driver and witness information. Is that sometimes difficult? Some people aren't very bold, and to walk up to somebody who might have been standing on the corner or whatever and say, "Hey, did you see what happened? Do you mind if I get your name and phone number?" How do you approach that?
Well, if you can do that, great. I mean, like you said, sometimes people aren't always quick to, if you're coming up and asking them, if you're the one that was involved or somebody in the car, is going to ask them for their name and number, they might be more hesitant. That's why another reason why you want to make sure the police get there, because they're more apt to say, tell the police, yeah, hey, I saw this, here's my name, here's my information. But certainly I would try to get their information because, a lot of times what happens is witnesses, um, they move or memories fade as time goes on, so the sooner you can get a hold of them the better. But always try to get that information if you can. Sometimes you can't, so or sometimes you're just too hurt, you're going off in the ambulance, so you just don't have the opportunity. But if you have the opportunity, then you should try to do it.
Taking notes, what do you mean by that? What's the type of thing that you should be recording on a notepad?
Well, I tell my clients, especially in the beginning, you just feel horrible. You're going, whatever it might be, a broken bone, just a bad neck, a bad back. The pain is really bad. You can't go to work. You can't hardly move. The time to write those things down is why that's happening, because as time marches on, I think humans, we tend to put the negative out of our lives and downplay things. So if I ask you 6 months later when we're trying to present this case to the insurance company, well, how did you feel the right after? You may not as remember as clearly as you did while it's happening. And there may be things you might forget, like, well, you know what, I missed that. I wasn't able to go to, it happened around Christmas time. I wasn't able to go to that Christmas party, or I usually have people over for Christmas. I couldn't do it this year because I just felt so lousy. I didn't want to, have everybody around when I felt miserable, those kinds of things. Or we missed a vacation, that kind of thing. Or you went on vacation that you had scheduled and, you were miserable because you were in pain the whole time. All those little things, you write them down. And those are what I call the intangible things. Insurance adjusters, they see medical records every day, and they are what they are. And a lot of times those intangible things, exactly those things you missed or how you were feeling may not show up in a medical record. So that's why I really emphasize with my clients, get those things written down. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It's just, whatever you jot it down. So, those are things I'll look at and, I'll use later on in a letter to the adjuster to describe how did this impact my client? And those are invaluable.
Yeah.
And I think that gives the case value.
Absolutely does. Talking about medical information, one of the things that you have listed is visit the doctor immediately. And I'm guessing, even if you don't really have an identifiable symptom at the time, I'm guessing you should see the doctor.
Yes, most times people will say, well, I feel okay. I got a stiff neck or that. I'm going to see if it, I'll take a hot shower and ask for it and see if it goes away. I would rather you go to the emergency room just to get checked out, because you never know what might be going on, especially if you might have hit your head or something like that. You always want to get that checked out, because you just never know. What might seem small can get very, big quickly. And when I say these things, I'm always telling people, I'm not telling you to go run up a bunch of medical bills. I'm not doing that. It's not my job to dictate, how your treatment goes. All I can do is suggest, hey, you should go immediately, because the alternative is the longer you wait, you can bet that the insurance company is going to bring this up. Well, they must not have been hurt too bad, because look,
they waited 6 months.
Yeah, they waited 6 months, or they waited 2 weeks to go to the emergency room. Even that's not a killer, but it's not helpful if there's if you don't seek treatment immediately, especially if you should have. You really need to do that, and then you follow let your doctor know how you're feeling, and then let the doctors determine what you need treatment wise after that.
Sure. This is something that you've talked about. I've heard you talk about this many, many times, and that is insurance. Now, here again, I want to stress, we're talking about just general information here, stuff for you to think about. I'm sure a lot of this varies from state to state and
Sure.
and other things. But as a general rule, a lot of times people just think, okay, well, I got liability, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of times you find out that there's more to it than that once the metal gets bent, right?
Right. Well, I'll ask people, what kind of coverage do you have? They'll say, well, I have full coverage. Well, what does full coverage mean? They have no idea what full coverage means. They think they have full coverage, but if you look at their insurance declaration page, you find out that they don't have full coverage, or what they think is full coverage is not. And I can't emphasize this enough. I know, Bill, at the networking meetings, you've heard me preach many times. I do it all the time, that you really got to know what kind of insurance coverage you have, because the time to find out that you don't have the right coverage is not after a collision, because at that point it's too late.
Yeah.
So, and what I mean by enough coverage, I mean not only your liability, so you're protected if it's your fault, But the most important thing is if the person that hit you, that person at fault, did not have enough insurance or did not have any insurance.
Yeah.
And that's what we call in Ohio uninsured or underinsured coverage. And a lot of people don't even know what that is or how much they have.
Interesting. Yeah, so that's something that here again, I'm a big believer, regardless of what kind of insurance it is, house and whatever. I'm a big believer in I'd rather have more than necessary
Yes. Yes.
than find out that oh well, it doesn't cover that.
Yes.
Moving on to some of the things that should be a priority to avoid, to not do after an accident. And this first one here, when I say don't admit fault, I think the inclination is, well, of course I'm not going to say that I caused the crash, but I think that a lot of people, regardless of who caused the crash, have that impulse if they see somebody who's shaken, if they see somebody's injured. Your first impulse is to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's it is instinctual where you want to just say, "Oh, that's my fault. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." And I'm sure there's plenty of times where that is the case, but I would refrain from doing that. Especially like if it's not a rear end or if it's something where maybe we're not sure who had what light or whatever that. Certainly don't say, "Well, I think I might have I might have run that red light." Don't say that, because you're
Yeah.
not sure. You may find out later on that you had the green light. So you got to be careful about what you say, especially if you're not sure, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You always tell the truth. That's the biggest thing. But there's no point in admitting something if you're not sure about it,
Yeah.
And even if you are sure, I wouldn't do it either. I'd rather you say nothing than admit something where we're not sure if you are at fault.
What happens if the person that you're involved in the accident with comes up and asks, didn't you, are you caused this? You know that, right? What's your response?
I would just tell them, you say, you know what, I'm not sure. Let's talk to the police officer and let them decide.
Okay, fair enough. The other, the next thing that you have listed here is not to accept any money from the other party's insurer. And I guess that kind of, what I've always been told about accepting money is that pretty much you've accepted a settlement. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You got to be careful about that. One, because a lot of times they're worried about their insurance going up or things like that, or they don't want to get any points on their license. If you call, they'll say, "Let's not call the police. Let's just settle it right now." That you really can't do that. You should always call the police. Because you never know, what might look like just a dented fender might turn out to be a bent frame. So even if you're not hurt, you don't want to end up with a bent frame and nobody to cover it. So you got to be really careful about that, and never accept any money there at the scene like that. That's a big no.
Sure.
Because it could be jeopardizing you down the road for a claim.
Absolutely. This one seems kind of obvious. I actually did this once. Um, don't don't leave the scene.
Yeah. Right. Well, you could, in a very restrictive sense, you could be charged with leaving the scene of an accident. So that could be a traffic, ticket right staring you in the face.
Yeah.
So don't leave the scene unless they tell you to. You really want to stick around till the police officer says, "Okay, you can go now." That's usually after they take your statement or have talked to you, that kind of thing. So, if it's a busy road or something like that, you'll see those signs that says, pull over to the side, things like that. You should pull over to the side, wait till the police to get there, try to be as safe as possible, get off the road if it's dangerous, that kind of thing. You always do that.
Sure.
But don't leave the scene, and make sure that if for some reason you did have to leave a scene, make sure the police officer knows why and where you're going, that kind of thing.
Yeah. In my case, I was 17 years old, and I was not driving. I was a passenger. We were on our way to school. There was two other people in the car with me. We got hit. We got rear-ended. It was a snowy day, and the person behind didn't allow enough room.
Mm-hmm.
So really all that happened is we got jarred, but it was enough that it busted up the bumper a little bit.
Right.
And they called the police, and the police were taking forever to get there. And we were 1 block away from my school, and I had perfect attendance that year. So I thought, I don't need to be here. I wasn't driving.
Right.
So I left, and I came home that afternoon, and then my mom and dad are like, the police were at this house and said you left the scene of an accident, which isn't exact. I mean, it's what happened, but it sounded a lot worse than what it really was.
I mean, it was admirable you wanted to keep your attendance at school. I respect that, but you should have stuck around.
Yes, I should have.
You really could. And the other reason is if there's any doubt whether you were at the scene or not, that could jeopardize if you find out later on, hey,
Yeah.
you were hurt. You
Yeah.
had a, it doesn't take a lot to have a whiplash injury of your neck or your back. And people
Yeah.
don't realize that. A lot of that force that when you get hit, especially in the rear, the force of that car is coming through your body as well as the
Yeah.
car. So sometimes it doesn't always hit you at once. The adrenaline's pumping, and you get home, and next thing you know, you got a really bad neck and a bad back or whatever. So stick around.
Yeah, I learned my lesson there. I won't do that again. This next one is don't wait to file your claim. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Could you explain that?
Well, it goes back to the idea that you want to get the insurance company involved as soon as possible. So that's why you should go to a personal injury attorney so he can send a letter to the insurance company that says, look, my client was involved in this collision on this date with this, you're insured, here's their name, here's their policy number, if you have it, if it's on the police report. That way it gets things rolling, and there's no doubt that that this happened and that there is a claim going to be pending. So some people want to wait around, or they just wait. And again, it's no good comes from waiting on any of this. So the sooner you do these things, the better.
The next one is kind of along the same lines, except make sure you do it to the right person. Don't give a statement to the other party's insurer.
Right. Now, sometimes, a client will not get a hold of me right away. It'll be after the fact. And, a lot of times the insurance companies, once they get notice of a claim, they're going to call, and they want to take your statement, a recorded statement. And, they do this all day in and day out. So they know the questions to ask. And sometimes they'll ask a question like, well, how are you feeling today? And somebody will say, well, I feel fine, I was hurt, but I feel okay. But they really aren't, or, they feel worse as time goes on. And believe me, they'll pull that statement back up and say, well, your client said back on, 2 days after collision, he felt fine, so, now he's saying he doesn't. Little, things like that, which are, they shouldn't do, but they will do. So, or they may talk about liability issues and get the client to say something that maybe they didn't really understand the question, or say something that maybe is against their interest that they'll try to use against them later on. So, especially the other insurance company, you just don't want to give a statement if you don't absolutely have to.
Yeah.
If you have to, and somebody's forcing you to pursue the claim or whatever, for whatever reason, it would only be with me sitting there, and listening. Again, you always tell the truth, but you want to make sure that the questions are being asked fairly and that you're answering the right way.
Sure, absolutely. Your law firm is Slagle and Kotnik, correct?
Correct.
That sounds like a TV show. It's on the next episode of Slagle and Kotnik.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like a TV show. But, no, I've been doing this for 34 years. Larry Slagle, he and I joined forces actually at the beginning of this year, 2024. I'm very honored and privileged to be a partner with Larry. He's been doing it, I think this is his 47th year.
Wow.
Or not. So he's seen it and done it all. I like to say I have too, but he's probably even more than me. So we have 70 plus years of experience, and we've handled little cases, we've handled, wrongful death cases and everything in between. And Larry's slogan, which we still use today, is, we're local lawyers on the side of people. And, I always think about that, and it's true. We're a local person. We're not somebody on a billboard. When you call, I'm real easy to talk to. Let's put it that you can get a hold of me. I return my calls. I have my cell phone on my card. So, I just really encourage my clients to get a hold of me, and, they'll talk to me. So not always, sometimes they'll talk to a paralegal, but if they need to talk to me, I always try to make myself available so I can talk to them directly. And that's good because there's no substitute for talking, directly to the client. Sometimes, they may talk to the paralegal and the doesn't get through like it needs to. So I'm always glad to talk to a client.
Yeah.
And even if it's the weekend, sometimes I'll say, look, just give me a call. I'd rather you call me on the weekend than worry all weekend about it. And wait till Monday to get an answer. I'll give you an answer right then and there if I can.
That is fantastic. And see, that's the kind of personalized service. And I'm always amazed when it comes to finding an attorney or finding insurance. People make these big decisions based on flashy ads or whatever, and or they're driven with the promise of how cheap it's going to be.
Right.
And obviously cost is always a concern. But I think a lot of people are enticed by these. Oh, we don't take nothing unless we win your case. And all
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And
Contingency fee. It's always a contingency fee. We charge a third, which is standard for most attorneys. We try to be as fair as possible in how we handle it and how we, what we're charging, our contingency fee and all those things. So, our clients are happy with the results, and we believe we, as far as our fee is fair and reasonable, for this
absolutely.
county.
Yeah. Like I said, I've known you a long time. You've always struck me as, somebody who's really passionate about their business, and taking care of people. I mean, everybody, I guess, even people who chase the almighty dollar are passionate about, but for the wrong reason.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with making money. I want to be clear. I think no matter what business you are in, if you're in the business of selling teddy bears, and your teddy bears are expensive, that's great as long as they're quality teddy bears.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
and I think that having when it comes to like a doctor, somebody in an attorney in a situation post automobile crash where this could be a relationship, because it's not
Right.
going to be over in 1 or 2 days.
No, absolutely not. I always tell my client, I earn my money by taking your job after a collision should be to get well. And that's a full-time job. You're having to take off work. You have to go to appointments, physical, whatever it happens to be. It's hard work. The last thing you want to do is worry about talking to an insurance company or your health, whatever it might be. Another insurance adjuster from your health insurance or whoever, all those things. That's what we do. We take that worry away. We take the worry away about, how your medical bills are going to get paid and back, paid back, things
Sure.
like that. There's all kinds of issues that come up in one of these scenarios. So as the attorney, we take that stress and worry away so you can concentrate on getting well, because, your health, this is the other thing I tell my clients, the case will be over at some point, but your health goes on forever.
Yeah.
So your health is still your health, after you're done with the case. So that's the most important thing, is your health, because you want to be healthy as much as you can, or hopefully 100% after this is all over. So, you need to concentrate on that.
Excellent advice. We've been talking to Don Kotnik of Slagle and Kotnik. Your website, where can people find out more information about you?
SlagleKotnikLaw.com.
Okay. SlagleKotnikLaw.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. That's the place to find you. Don, some great information here today. Really appreciate you stopping by. This is stuff to think about. Like I said, it's not legal advice. That's something you have to get. You really have to acquire that and get somebody who's on your side and knows your specific situation. But this is all stuff to think about. Something that a lot of times people haven't thought about too. And I'll ask you this before we go: your spouse or your family knowing your information if you happen to get badly injured. How important is that?
As far as
whether it be insurance or your medical stuff, all that stuff.
Yeah, you should make sure what again, your coverage and things like that. Know that information. How much coverage am I carrying, that kind of thing. And I just touched on that. I hope just a minute just to touch on it again.
Sure, go ahead.
The uninsured, underinsured coverage. You really need to have as much as you can afford. And people be surprised how easy it is to go from one level to the next. Like 100,000, 300 to 250, 500,000 is dollars as opposed to hundreds of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
If you check with most insurance companies, and just there's not a plaintiff's attorney that does what I do that won't give you more than multiple examples of very bad injuries, but with little or no coverage. My sister said I could talk about her case. She raised her coverage from 50 to 100. This was many years ago, but she ended up getting in an accident like 2 weeks after she did that. After I told her, I said, you need to up this up. And she got into a collision where she had to have neck surgery. So, luckily she had bumped it up.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise she would have been stuck at 50, so she had, I forget what it was, 100 or 200. But we all have examples of collisions where people have broken necks and things like that. And they find out the person that was at fault either didn't have any insurance or had the state minimum, which is $25,000 in Ohio.
Wow.
And in a bad collision, that doesn't cover.
Oh, no. Yeah, that doesn't cover much at all.
So I can't emphasize that enough. You really got to check your uninsured, underinsured coverage and make sure you know what those limits are and keep it as high as you can.
Great information, Don. Thank you so much
Thanks, Bill.
for coming by, sharing this information. So valuable. Again, Slagle and Kotnik is the firm here in Northeastern Ohio. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Want to tell our listeners, this is all important stuff. Make sure you research it and have those conversations. I know you don't want to talk about things like that with your family. What happens if we get in an accident? Are we covered? We didn't get into like living wills and all this other stuff yet, but that's all part of it. I mean, you can have a bad heart attack, end up in an emergency room, or you could have a bad accident and end up in the same situation.
That's right.
So these are all things, while everyone is young and healthy and feeling like they're going to live forever, that's the time to have these conversations. Thank you so much, Don.
Thank you, Bill.
As far as our listeners goes, don't forget, you can find the Billy D's podcast just about anywhere podcasts are found. Kind of like my social media home is on X. Used to be Twitter, but now it's X, at Billy D's there. Thank you so much for checking out our program today, and we will talk to you again real soon.